All right, ladies and gentlemen, we were just talking about China with Congressman Holt, and we were just talking about the cyber attacks that they've been pulling off, and the espionage, and the threat that they are, and the building up of their military, and on so many different levels. They're a country that needs to be watched, and that we need to be, very, very leery of, and yet. The revelation that China has accepted an invitation from this administration, from our Pentagon, to participate in next year's Rim of the Pacific naval exercise, which will be held off the coast of Hawaii. It will mark the first time that China will take part in this event. And joining us now is a man who co-authored a great op-ed in the LA Times on this. Gordan Chang, writer on Asian affairs, author of The Coming Collapse of China, joins us. And Gordan, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much.
What on earth is the rationale? You called the headline on your op-ed, I don't know if you wrote it or not, is America's China Mistake. What on earth is the Pentagon giving for a rationale to include and invite China to participate in this exercise?
I think the Pentagon is really following the White House. And this White House and ones before it really want to try to avoid all the turmoil and destruction that arose when we saw, Japan and Germany's problems in the 20th century. So the idea is that if we try to integrate China into the international system, we won't have that war and turmoil. But the problem is that China is becoming much more aggressive, much more assertive and belligerent. Their flag officers are talking about waging war on the United States. And so this is completely nuts.
Yeah, well, it is absolutely completely nuts to me, and obviously to you, the expert. So I'm glad I'm in good company in thinking that it's completely nuts. This is part, as you mentioned, and I'm not surprised of this administration. But you also say previous administrations. But why, if this is something that the philosophy, it's been the philosophy of previous administrations, and it's probably a good philosophy to want to avoid that kind of thing. But reality has to be taken into consideration. And as much as previous administrations have had the same kind of hopes and thoughts, nonetheless, when it came to this exercise, they've never invited China. So why do you believe the Obama administration is doing it?
That's really hard to figure out, especially, the Obama administration came to office really wanting to cooperate with China, but China didn't cooperate with the president. And so we saw what's called the pivot or rebalancing, where the U.S. tried to reassure our allies in Asia that we would protect them from Chinese aggression. And now to try to invite the Chinese to participate in these RIMPAC exercises, which really are very important to us and our allies, makes no sense whatsoever. Because what we're doing is we're helping China to become more capable so that it is better able to fight us. That's why I believe that we should withdraw that invitation. We should not have these military-to-military relations with China until we're confident that China wants to be a partner with us rather than to be an adversary.
All right, explain, if you can, Gordan, exactly what the RIMPAC exercises entail and why it's such a mistake.
Well, RIMPAC is once every 2 years, where the United States, with our treaty allies, also with our friends in the region, exercise off the coast of Hawaii. And this takes, we work with them because we want to be able to cooperate with them to get our militaries so they can sortie together, they can communicate with each other, and get the know-how. And so this is important because we're trying to raise our readiness and our capabilities. That's why the Chinese should not be a part of this. I have no objection to talking to China, but having China in the tent, that's a different story altogether.
Yeah, I remember, was it under the Clinton administration when we let the Chinese buy the port or dock their ships at the port? And maybe it was more recently. You could probably tell me. And I remember the outcry and the outrage then. But this, treating them basically, and correct me if I'm wrong in my language here, treating them as allies. I mean, military allies, someone to cooperate with militarily, when in fact we should not be viewing them that way because they do not view themselves that way. What they're probably saying is, high-fiving each other, saying, look at these suckers. We want to take them over. We want to destroy them. We want to do anything we can to get them. And they're saying, come on over.
Yeah, this is really important because Chinese flag officers and senior colonels talk about waging war in the United States within a short period of time, perhaps as little as 5 years. We know that the Chinese Navy is configuring itself to fight us. They have weapons that basically they're developing only to use against the United States. And that's especially true of this DF-21D ballistic missile, which we call the carrier killer. I mean, we're the only country with carriers that they're worried about. And so while all of this goes on, we then try to help them increase their readiness and their capability. And it was not just RIMPAC that's really a problem. We also invited the Chinese to be part of the anti-Somali campaign, which is, the piracy.
Right.
This really helped the Chinese increase their capability of their Navy. So this is not just a one-off mistake. This is a mistake that goes back many, many years.
And we're talking, by the way, to Gordan Chang, writer on Asian affairs, the author of The Coming Collapse of China, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Talk about militarily, and if you care to speak on the cyber. I mean, cyber-wise, what I heard just a couple of weeks ago, which really should trouble all of us, is that they actually were able to disarm our nuclear defenses or our silo, missiles launching systems or whatever through cyber attacks, but also speak to the as you point out in your piece, the aggressive tactics of the Chinese military that's been going on for years, directed at us.
Yeah, in the South China Sea and in the Yellow Sea, international waters, the Chinese have been harassing unarmed U.S. Navy reconnaissance vessels. And in one of those incidents in March 2009, the harassment was so serious that it constituted an attack on an American vessel. In other words, an act of war. But we didn't say anything about it, and the Chinese have continued to do that. And as you point out, we have all of these cyber attacks. So for about 20 years, China has been conducting cyber espionage and cyber attacks against American networks. And as we learned from the Washington Post a couple of days ago, the Chinese have gotten the plans for some of our most advanced weapons, including the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, the Aegis ballistic missile system, the PAC-3 ballistic missile system. These are all very, very important to us because the Chinese probably will be able to disable them if we ever end up in a mix-up with them. And they very well may be able to take our missiles and turn them around so that our missiles hit U.S. targets.
Wow.
This is something that we have to be thinking about because their penetration of our networks has been so complete.
Wow. That is mind-boggling and horrific to think about, but I don't doubt that for a second. Let me also run something by you that when I just had Congressman Rush Holt on, and I've asked other congressmen about this as well. There's an impending deal that's just gotten committee approval in the Congress to go through, where Sprint is up for sale. Third largest wireless telecommunications company in the nation, and a Japanese company with software connections that use the software of a Chinese company that has had all kinds of nefarious connections to spying and cyber warfare. And it appears that deal is headed ready to be allowed to go through. And I would just imagine again that this government, this Congress, or whoever is in charge of stopping this or scrutinizing this would do well to make sure that they just don't allow yet another inroad for China to basically be in charge of through a third party a company like Sprint.
Yeah, SoftBank's proposed purchase of Sprint, does raise a number of national security issues. To its credit, the United States is forcing SoftBank and Sprint to remove Chinese equipment from Huawei, which is their big telecom equipment provider. But we really have to be thorough because Huawei chips and servers and equipment are really buried deep into the global intercommunication system. And so we really need to work very, very hard to get that out if we want to allow SoftBank to acquire Sprint, which looks like it's going to go through.
Can we ever be sure that they weed that out or get rid of that before they actually make an acquisition?
I think it's going to be very hard for the U.S. authorities to make sure that all the Chinese equipment has been taken out. And that really is an important issue, which the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States looked at, but I think probably came to the wrong decision. There's a lot more work that needs to be done before this deal can go through.
All right, you close your piece in the LA Times, your op-ed, by saying, as Ronald Reagan taught us, the nature of regimes matter. We're now helping an incurably aggressive state develop its military to our peril. There is something very wrong at the core of the Obama administration's and the Pentagon's China policies. I mean, we could focus on a number of policies regarding foreign policies and say the same thing at the end, that there's a whole lot wrong with their way of thinking, whether it's Iran, whether it's Russia, you name it. But China poses a threat that is above and beyond, I think, any threat. And I don't think there's many in the media and certainly not in politics who will come out and say that right away. The first knee jerk is Iran, which, don't get me wrong, is dangerous. But I think our biggest security threat on almost every level is, in fact, China.
Yeah, and China is behind Iran and North Korea. And so, yes, Iran and North Korea are threats, but they really wouldn't be able to endanger us if it weren't for the support that they were getting from Beijing. So we don't really have an Iran problem, for instance. We have a China problem.
And how much of the strings, and I've asked this of several Chinese experts, does China still pull the strings with North Korea? I mean, can they rein them in whenever they want, or has that, is that not the case as much as it used to be in the past?
China can rein in North Korea when it wants to. Most of the time, it is very happy to have the North Koreans engage in these provocations, because when they do that, we always run to Beijing and ask for China's help. And the Chinese are ruthlessly pragmatic. They get a lot of concessions from us. So this is a big kabuki act between Beijing and Pyongyang. This is something that we've got to understand, because every time that they do this in North Korea, we go to China, and we never, ever learn.
Yeah, no, we never, ever learned. That's for sure. Gordan Chang, thank you so much, sir. I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you, and I do so as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Gordan Chang, Asian affairs writer, the author of The Coming Collapse